Talk about low-budget flights. No food or movies? I'm out of here. I like running better. Welcome back, YouTube viewers, to another video. So, it's time I finally do a proper video on the Madagascar trilogy. I've talked about this trilogy before on my DreamWorks ranking, and I thought it was very good. I liked it. It was pretty funny, good comedies and all that. But as I've been going through my rewatch of all the best DreamWorks movies, in my opinion anyway, which if you want to see some of my reviews of, you can check my letterboxd. I'll try to remember to link that in the description. But when I recently rewatched the Madagascar trilogy, these all went from being very good to just this trilogy is a masterpiece. Like, I am not exaggerating or anything. I genuinely believe that. I gotta say, the first two are each a 9 out of 10 masterpiece, and the third is an 8 out of 10. It's not quite that level, but I still think it's really good. Why would I have such a bold claim? Well, why don't we continue the video and you can see why. So, of course, I'm going to talk about the first movie. I enjoyed this a ton on rewatch. I already did have a lot of fun with it the first time, but it's really good. And sure, at the end of the day, these first two especially, they're comedies. So really, whether or not you enjoy it is dependent on whether or not you think it's funny. And I think this movie is hysterical. Nearly every single joke is funny. Whether it be the stuff about Alex's ego, like all the Alex the Lion prizes he gives Marty for his birthday. Stuff like all the jokes about Melman being super sick and having all sorts of medical bills. Him thinking they ended up in a San Diego zoo. Or as Chappelle's production said, comedy itself peaked when Melman said, "Guys, we're running out of time!" and he had a clock on his head. Ha ha ha. Alex getting beaten up by an old lady, the penguins, King Julian. This movie is hilarious. It reminds me a bit of Duck Soup, the Marx Brothers. If you don't know what that is, I have a video on the Marx Brothers, which you should check out. Although, I'd recommend you just watch their movies yourself. Like, if I have to recommend one, it'd be Duck Soup for sure. But I think some of their movies are on Prime Video for free. But anyway, so what I mean by that is that Duck Soup is just a comedy. It has a thin story. It's very short. It's just absurdity, and it's hilarious. It's genuinely one of my top 5 favorite movies. Now, this movie is a little longer than Duck Soup. It does have a little more story, but it still is really just about being wacky, and it is really fun. I think there's a good reason this movie was such a big hit when it came out. I mean, it's incredibly simple. It's not like Shrek, where it's a really silly comedy, does actually have some pretty solid emotional beats and some nice thematic messaging. It's just silly. And it does have some story. Like, I was surprised at how invested I got in the story of Alex and Marty, because the reason it works is because in the beginning, you really buy that Alex, Marty, Gloria, and Melman are all best friends. They have been for a long time. So when you see them, Alex and Marty get really mad at each other and get into this argument that is pretty understandable, to be fair. You see them grow apart. As they're trapped on Madagascar, Alex starts giving into his animalistic instincts. It's done genuinely well. It's not amazing or anything. I mean, it's Madagascar, but I actually quite liked it. DreamWorks, look, they have some terrible movies. I haven't really said that many times because I praise the studio so often, but because, well, for all their terrible movies, they do have so many I really like. And I think this is a good example of how even one of their most silly films, they can still put in something of meaning. Alex is able to break his animalistic instincts and able to still be friends and with Marty and all the rest, even though you think because animal kingdoms, rival the fittest, all that, he would want to eat them, but he's able to reject that because he is such good friends with them. It's hard, but he's able to overcome it. That's genuinely pretty good. And yeah, since the movie is so funny, I gotta say, this is a masterpiece. It's so weird to say about Madagascar, but I wholeheartedly believe that. Madagascar Escape to Africa is one of the funniest things I've ever seen in my entire life. This is my favorite of the trilogy. It's not quite perfect, but it's pretty close to that, honestly. I love Madagascar Escape to Africa. Basically, everything that I liked about the first movie is here and then some. Okay, granted, it takes itself even less seriously, but I think that works to its advantage. If I think this one is more applicable to being like duck soup. If the first movie was Animal Crackers, this one is duck soup. I bet none of, unless you saw my Marx Brothers video, I bet none of you understand what I mean by that. But yeah, so you know, simple story. The zoo animals, along with the penguins and King Julian, Maurice and Mort, are on this huge airplane being flown by the penguins. They're gonna go to New York City. The animals are finally gonna get to go home. But of course, they end up crash landing somewhere in Africa, and hilarity ensues. That's basically it. Can I just say how funny King Julian is in this movie, especially? He's great in all three of these, but he is just so good here. He has all these ridiculous lines, like when Melman's saying, "Oh well, I'm gonna die soon," and just one person I'm thinking about. It's a woman, and he says, "Ah, a woman, huh? Well, you see, I got up to her, to your eyes, your lips, had a short distance, and say, baby, I hate you." What? And then Melman, of course, says he doesn't hate her. And then there's a whole thing about King Julian saying, "Ah, the water is gone. I guess that means we must sacrifice someone into a volcano to the water gods." Or him and Maurice trying to get away from Mort, who is just somehow following them at every single turn. Like he gets chased by a shark. He swims across the ocean, I'm assuming. They do a reference to the Twilight Zone where he's on the wing of the airplane and Alex thinks he's a gremlin. It's so funny. Don't worry, King Julian. I'm sure this democracy thing is just a fad. But then, of course, there's the actual main story about the animals, which, yeah, I think it's just really funny. This time, Alex and Marty's argument is not supposed to be taken as seriously as it was before, but I think that works. So in the first movie, there was this joke line about Marty saying, or no, wondering if he's a zebra with a white zebra with black stripes or a black zebra with white stripes. And then that basically is how their argument gets resolved here, because when all the animals meet the other members of their kind, Marty finds that every single zebra looks and sounds and acts exactly the same, which is just so funny. And then when Alex accidentally thinks one of these guys is Marty, Marty gets really mad at him, saying, "I'm your best friend, man, and you still thought I was one of them and not me?" He says, "But you look a lot alike," and it's really funny. Yeah, look, it's stupid, but I thought it was funny. Melman and Gloria's subplot is probably my least favorite part, but I still thought it was pretty funny. It's Gloria is in love with this Moto guy, I guess, who... Can I just say, how did DreamWorks get away with that subplot? Like, I know they have some raunchy humor in their movies, but that really takes the cake, I gotta say. And, Melman is just randomly revealed to have been in love with Gloria the whole time, but he doesn't know how to compete with this Moto guy. But there is no dumb love triangle or whatever. Moto is barely even in it. It's just, Melman just shows up and finds that, Moto is actually some kind of loser to Gloria and only loves her for her body, basically. As Mater would say, she only loves me for my body. This is so stupid. Yeah, I started this video becoming more of a ramble, but it's kind of hard to talk about these movies without just going on a ramble about whatever random stuff happens. Or how about Alex's subplot where he reunites with his parents and this evil lion is manipulating him, and like he has to fight Fred Tatasciore, but he thinks it's a dance competition, and then he gets kicked out of the pack and all that stuff. It's just like I don't really know how to describe it other than it's funny and it's ridiculous. The stuff with the penguins is great. The penguins and the monkeys trying to fix the airplane. Yeah, it's kind of hard to talk about this movie without just going on a ramble, because I wonder if that was intentional. Because how do you describe this movie? Like, where do you even begin? Like how this movie is the second installment of the DreamWorks sequels that are about parents. Shrek 2. The main conflict stems from Shrek's in-laws, especially his father-in-law, thinking he's a monster and wanting nothing to do with him. Kung Fu Panda 2. Po finds out he's adopted, is trying to grapple with his past memories of, did his parents really love him or did they just throw him away? Which gets expanded on Kung Fu Panda 3 when he meets his biological father. You've got How to Train Your Dragon 2 where Hiccup reunites with his long lost mother who he thought she was dead the whole time. And this movie is just the animals just land in some random nature preserve in Africa that just so happens to be where Alex's parents are. That's it, and it's funny. Also, the random old lady who beats up Alex comes back, and she has this whole subplot with all the other humans that is genuinely really funny. And the villain in this movie, he does not have some kind of dramatic death like so many other DreamWorks villains, some kind of super cathartic defeat. No, 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 no. He gets beat up by an old lady, which honestly is the perfect way for a Madagascar villain to get beat up. It's hilarious. I really love this movie. If there's one thing I will say, though, it has my least favorite cover of I Like to Move It, which is in the credits of all these movies. The one in the first movie is the best. Duh, it's the original. The one here is good. It's just my least favorite. Okay, Madagascar 3, Europe's Most Wanted. This one was interesting to me, especially on rewatch, because it's the most like a real movie out of this whole trilogy. But and despite that not quite lining with the tone of the first two films, I think this one trying to be more of a real movie was actually a good call. Because I never really thought about this until I rewatched this one, but they could have made so many of these Madagascar movies. They could have made 2 or 3 more. Think about it. Second one they land in Africa, third one they land in Europe. You could have just had them go through every continent. You don't even need to just do that. You could just have them go on crazy adventures forever and ever, and they'd make money probably. But no, the people at DreamWorks decided we are going to make this a trilogy, and we're going to give it a satisfying conclusion that wraps up the story of the first two films in a satisfying way that actually has meaning to it. And meaning is not exactly what you think of when you think of the Madagascar series. But somehow they're able to take the manic tone of the previous films, combine it with more of a real story with actual depth and all that, and make it really good. I am genuinely surprised at this movie. Because it still starts off with that insane tone of the first two films, This time the animals are they finally escape Africa because finally want to get back to New York City already. And they end up in Monte Carlo where they get chased by this insane animal hunter, and then they join the circus, which is where the movie's plot kicks into gear. And I like the circus animals a lot, actually. Sure, they do end up sidelining Marty, Melvin, and Gloria, who don't really do anything in this movie. And it's really mostly just about Alex, but I quite like his story in this movie. He's able to understand where all the circus animals are coming from and how they used to have this great circus, but now they've just become failures. All of them. Like, Ravelli, I think his name was, the tiger. He used to do this literally impossible circus trick that everyone loved. But once he got too arrogant, he messed up and he could never do it again. His circus became a failure. The dude even lost his wife. Or, I thought the Martin Short voiced sea lion was pretty funny. I don't know. I thought the tigress girl or no, lioness character, she was pretty good too. The penguins are pretty funny in this movie, even though they're probably at their weakest. I don't know. I think the villain was really good. I think everyone says the villain was really good because she embodies the manic tone of the previous films. She's just manifested as them, which you could argue the penguins are the manifestations of that, but this villain really takes the cake. She just spends this whole movie basically crawling around on all fours like an animal, sniffing out their scents, singing opera, which makes guys cry or shatters windows or something, and there's a whole pretty funny bit with the oldest trick in the book, hiding hiding on the ceiling, or the tunnel underneath the bed, and even older, the hole in the back of the poster. And of course she was hiding in another place, and the whole thing. I do want to say though that this is definitely my least favorite of the trilogy. King Julian is still pretty good, but he's at his weakest here, I think. Because is his subplot about being in love with this Frank Welker voiced bear pretty funny? Yeah. But it's a little weird because I mean it's kind of sidelines Maurice and Mort, which isn't as funny. And like, yeah, I gotta say though, King Julian stealing the Pope's ring is hilarious. But what else? Oh yeah, I'm not really a fan of the human art style in this movie. The first two films, the humans tried to look more realistic, which I think did actually work in their favor. But for here, well, I do think making the animal control lady more cartoony did work. I mean, these are pretty ridiculous films. I think making the rest of the humans cartoony just didn't look quite right. I don't know, but the visuals are really impressive. Only came out a few. The first two only came out 3 years apart and look pretty similar in terms of visual quality, but this one only came out 4 years after the second. It's a huge step up in visuals, kind of like with Shrek Forever After from the previous films of that series. The movie looks really good. All three of these movies have some really good cartoony animation, but everything else in this movie looks really impressive. The backgrounds, the directing, the lighting, all of it. It's really good. And I like the character arcs we get here. The circus animals learning to truly understand what made their circus so good in the first place, trying to bring that back, trying to be creative, getting back into their groove. Alex inspiring them. Melman, Marty, and Gloria may not have much to do, but they get some fun little subplots, I guess. Like Melman can't dance, or Marty wants to get shot out of a cannon. But the ending of this movie is what I always remembered it for the most. Um, After we get a pretty good lie reveal plot, I have to say, which can I just say really quickly, I think people really exaggerate how bad the lie revealed plot is. It can be done poorly, but I've seen it a lot of times and I like it. So I don't know. Maybe I've just seen times when it was done well, I'm not sure. But after that whole plot, the zoo animals finally make it back to the Central Park Zoo, and then they just begin to reflect on how boring their lives were before this series started. Like they look at Marty's mural of Africa and his pen, they just realize that really doesn't capture the majesty of the real thing, right? Or some of them have these walls or fences between their different enclosures. It's just that their own lives at the zoo they may have liked, but it was just not fulfilling. There just wasn't much for them to do. But once the series started, once they got on all these crazy adventures, they did so much. They got to travel the world. They really got to live. They got to do things. I mean, Marty said is during this that, I wish I hadn't ever tried to go to Connecticut, or else we wouldn't have anything to be sad about right now. But Alex says, "What? Are you kidding? You trying to leave the zoo and go to Connecticut for a night was the best thing that ever happened to us." And this is what inspires them to want to go back to the circus animals, to help them out, to really live, because that's where they belong, at the circus. They're a bunch of crazy wild cards. And then, of course, they get captured by the animal control lady, and they get put back in the zoo. And this time, all their cages, not really cages, well, this time they actually look like cages. They have all these huge fences around them. They can't really talk to each other anymore. And Madame Dubois, the animal control lady, finally said her name, huh? Is going to be given this big check for bringing back Alex the Lion to New York. And then she just wants to shoot him with a dart or something. And then the circus animals come back to save them the last minute when they realize that they shouldn't have been so angry at their new friends and all that. And they save the day, and the zoo animals are able to get away, run away, join the circus. As they get to see Madame Dubois locked up in Alex's pen, standing on his stone, growling around like an animal. As Alex says, "That's where the zoo. That's where animals like you belong." And he says, "Sit, roll over," and she does just that because she's unconscious or whatever. That is some really funny and both. That's really funny and both surprisingly satisfying. And as the animals get onto the train with the rest of the zoo animals, sailing, or not really sailing, leaving, ready to begin their new lives, they ask, what did happen to Dubois? The penguins reveal, we're going to see the penguins dumped her and her cronies in boxes on a boat bound for Madagascar, just like what happened to the animals in the first movie. That is some really good, I don't know if I'd call it setup and payoff, but, like, cohesion, I guess. And then the movie's credits end off with one final version of I Like to Move It. And this time it's the original version, but with this circus bit added to it. Yeah, this is a really good trilogy, guys. Like, I've seen some people who did enjoy it a lot, but I don't think anyone quite gives it the amount of the respect I think it genuinely deserves. Because, yeah, as I said before, whether you like these movies or not just depends on whether or not you think they're funny. And I think they're hilarious, so having a trilogy like this is just. And yeah, it's always going to impress me how they didn't just make this franchise go on forever so they can make as much money as possible. They actually made it a real story with a beginning, middle, and end. And I have a ton of respect to the people at DreamWorks for doing that because yeah, they really didn't need to. This definitely isn't the best DreamWorks trilogy. I have to say this with complete honesty. I just rewatched the Shrek series, and while I do really enjoy it, this is a better story to me than the Shrek saga. I'm not even just saying because of Shrek the Third, because I didn't watch that. I just watched the three good ones. And when you compare these two, I just gotta say, I liked this more. I liked the first two Madagascar movies more than Shrek 2. I can't wait for an angry comment saying how I'm stupid. My opinion. So, comment down below what you thought of this, because I think people might have some interesting thoughts on what I had to say about these movies. So, that's all for now. And remember to stay way past cool.